Coming up on this episode, we get an inside look of Copenhagen Suborbitals. Stay tuned. This is Tomorrow. And welcome to Tomorrow, episode 8.25 for Saturday, August 29th, 2015. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham, who thought I was going to hit her head again this week, but I did not. Now, before we start this show, let's go ahead and give a huge shout-out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who would help to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are the people who've contributed $10 or more to this specific episode. If you'd like to help crowdfund this show, because we are a crowdfunded show, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. All right, we got a bunch of space news, a bunch of launches, a bunch of really cool things that have happened. Let's start off in China. You're never going to believe this, but watch the Chinese footage. We actually have Chinese footage from a secret military launch. Here you go. And that's about all you actually get of it. That happened on August 27th. No, really, watch. It's going to cut away right about like here, somewhere in here.
Whatever, it lifted off. It's fine.
It did. That happened August 27th at 2:31 Coordinated Universal Time. That was a psychedelic screen that they've got put up from the, and again, forgive my pronunciations, but it's Taijuan Launch Base, which is in northeastern China's Shaanxi province.
Sure.
I can't. That. Yep. Yeah. Psychedelic
Sounds
screens
good.
again. Psychedelic
Awesome.
screens. The official purpose of that was for their normal land surveys, crop yields, and what's the last thing? Oh, I'm sorry. Disaster prevention. However, with the inclination in which the satellite is sitting, it is almost certainly a reconnaissance satellite, much like pretty much all the other satellites that have launched there on those vehicles. So. It's almost certainly a military satellite. There was no pre-notice.
It's not that they can't do those other things, though, as well.
They can, and actually they do have other satellites that do that, just not that particular satellite. And at least now they're releasing footage of the launches.
Yeah.
Right? Before they were just like, nope, here's a picture.
Well, and it was pretty.
It was a good picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at least now we have like 30 seconds of launch footage, which
Yay.
I'll take. You know, that's a step
screens.
forward. Well, and I get yelled at. I get yelled at in the comments like, how dare you, something, something, China, blah, blah, blah. The U.S. just does military satellites too. That's the point. You can have a military satellite. Just don't try to pretend like it's not there.
A military, yeah.
Right. But the U.S. launches, and they're like, yeah, no, that's totally a military satellite. We're not going to tell you what it does. We're not going to tell you anything about it, but that's a military satellite. So anyhow, there you go. All right, moving right along.
In other launch news,
Launchy launch,
as it were, here's a whole bunch of acronyms coming at you. There's a GSAT 6 launch via a GSLV. Yay. Launch.
And launch.
Also very pretty. It's like fire in the sky.
I think that's a song.
Yeah, probably. So this is the Indian Space Research Organization, or the ISRO, successfully launched a geosynchronous satellite. Geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle, which is the GSLV part, from the Satish Dhawan Space Center at 11:22 GMT or 7:22 AM EDT. What?
UTC, Coordinated Universal Time.
Oh, that's what happens when I copy and paste. I'm sorry. This is the third successful launch of the year for the ISRO. This was using the Indian-built third stage fueled by super cold liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. The reason I even point out that it's the Indian-built third stage is because previously they have used some Russian-built third stages, and not everything has gone very well for them.
We're going to be talking about that later in the show, actually.
Yep, this is the third time the GSLV flew with a domestic third stage engine of the GSLV Mark II is what they're calling it. The GSAT 6 satellite, which I imagine there's just a geosynchronous satellite, which is why they call it the GSAT 6, has an S-band and a C-band communications payloads with 5 spot beams and 1 nationwide beam, as they like to say. The main user of this particular satellite is pretty much the Indian military, and their next launch is scheduled for September 28th.
I'm actually surprised we're still using C-band. Although I guess it does blow through like all weather
A
and
whole
whatnot.
bunch of stuff, yeah.
So that makes sense. All right, moving right along, we have another launch. This happened on Friday, August 28th at 11:44 Coordinated Universal Time, also known as GMT, but properly known as Coordinated Universal Time. Oh yeah, you're never going to hear the end of that.
I know.
This is the Inmarsat 5 F3. It's a communication satellite launched by a Proton. This footage is beautiful. Check it out. Slightly hypergolic.
Scary pants? That looks like it's not real.
Don't walk into that cloud. Oh man, they have. I mean, their camera work here is just.
That really does not look real.
It is amazing. It is truly.
Yeah.
It is absolutely gorgeous. It is
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous. This is the first flight since a launch failure in May. The satellite itself is built by Boeing, and as I mentioned, it's a communication satellite. It's going to cover Asia, Australia, and the Pacific, but be controlled right here in America. This is part of the Global Express satellite constellation, which is part of Inmarsat's 5th generation fleet. Basically, it's using Ka band now, and that will give them 50 megabits per second downlink and 5 megabits per second uplink of networking capabilities for, say, like internet. Should be fully operational over the Americas by the end of August. And I said it was controlled by the Americas. I know it's going to be operational over the Americas, but now that I say that, I don't actually know where the control is. So I take all of that back. I take the control part of it back.
Copy.
All right, moving right along. Some really cool announcements that are going to be coming up. There's been a media advisory sent out by none other than Blue Origin. Roll de facto only footage we have of Blue Origin.
Yes.
I know, right? This is not what their advisory is. This is their spacecraft and their spaceship that they actually launched earlier this year, if I remember right. So here's the deal. The announcement's going to be at the Cape. It's, quote, a significant announcement regarding the commercial launch industry, unquote. That's according to the media invitation.
Mean?
So here's what.
Come on.
We're expected to confirm that Blue Origin's going to be building rockets and launching them from the Space Coast, which is down in Florida, down at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station or Kennedy Space Center. The manufacturing facility is expected to go into the Exploration Park facility, which is run by Space Florida. And then eventually the launches of orbital human spaceflight, not suborbital, orbital human spaceflight from Space Launch Complex 36, also at Cape. That's the Cape. Anyone know, is that Cape Canaveral side or is that Kennedy Space Center side? I think that's Cape Canaveral side of the spaceport down there. So we're expecting that within the next month or so, we'll get an announcement as to what's going on. So it's kind of cool that Blue Origin's starting to actually let us know that what they're doing, but also that we've got more and more of these.
I just love how their timing is like crazy weird. Like they're either like, hey guys, we totally did something like 3 weeks ago, or like, hey guys, we plan to say something about a month from now.
It's
like the weird, like nobody can coordinate this stuff, man.
You've got SpaceX on one end of the spectrum where they're like, oh hey, we've got an announcement tonight at 5, come show up. And you're like, what?
Right.
And then you've got Blue Origin who's like, hey, we've got an announcement in a month maybe.
Hey, I just want to let you know we might be saying something soonish.
Something in between, guys. Like, give me a week's notice. Give me a week's notice, people. I don't know what. Space industry.
Sometimes.
Crazy
Seriously.
people. All right, moving right along.
All right, so I'm getting so sick of this particular headline. I went back trying to find the last time that we talked about it, and I couldn't quite find it. But for sure, within the last year, I'm going to find it because it's going to drive me crazy.
Oh, and
I have already said that Lynx is supposed to fly in the next 6 to 9 months.
Although, here's the best part. We're going to roll the same stock footage that we roll every time we air this story. Footage.
For the same reason. Okay. So X-Core mechanical engineer Mark Pack estimates that that X-Core has 6 to 9 months, is 6 to 9 months away from Lynx first flight. Which is really exciting, assuming that, again, it is within the next 6 to 9 months.
We had the same problem with Virgin Galactic, though, right? They were always 6 months from flying, 6 months from flying.
So the main structure is complete. They're working on wing mounts. Those are being made. They're going to be doing the ground testing in the Mojave Air and Spaceport here in California, even though a lot of their people have already moved on to Midland, Texas. Basically, the idea is that the testing is going to be going on in Mojave because they have a longer runway, and they don't have to shut down a commercial airport in order to do testing. Which is why they're not doing the testing in like I said, in Midland, Texas. So the other thing is that they want to do some of the testing things before they move absolutely everyone down to Midland. because they don't want to have to shut anything down during the move.
What's interesting is on a side note, Huntsville is working on converting their airport into a spaceport as well, which is an interesting concept.
Huntsville, Alabama?
Yeah, I believe it was Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure
I
it was
just don't know of
Huntsville.
any other Huntsville, I guess.
I'm completely off my show notes at this point doing this.
Sure.
This is just me. I read an article earlier. The reason I read it is because Huntsville was like, we're going to make the world's first commercial spaceport. And I was like, what? No? You're like, maybe in the top 10, but definitely not first. But actually what they're doing is they're doing something specifically for like the Lynx, where you'll be able to land Lynx at just the regular airport runway.
Isn't that what Houston was doing?
Maybe
Isn't
it was
Houston's idea?
Maybe it was Houston. I thought it was Huntsville, though.
Okay, I thought like we totally
it
covered this.
was one of the H ones. I thought it was Huntsville.
Goodness.
I was
You were
pretty
so good off
I'm
of your
pretty
notes,
sure
it's
that
not even
article was
funny.
about Huntsville, though.
All right. Awesome. We'll go look that one up then too, I guess.
All right, that's what happens when I break from show notes. You're welcome, Internet. All right, did you have more data? Or you,
No, I mean that's pretty much it. Is that the estimation is 6 to 9 months away. They have a good portion of the vehicle completed, but they're still working on the wing mounts.
So what you're saying is about 6 to 9 months, we're going to basically air the exact same story.
And have the same,
Same footage.
I'm gonna go back and find
Footage
it.
is from 2 years ago. It's actually 7-year-old footage, but the stuff we have is the 720p footage, which was from 2 years ago.
Well then.
All right, finally, Russia is looking at replacing the Soyuz booster, the Soyuz 2.1, with a Soyuz 5. And now there's going to be, basically you're going to see additional announcements. Later this year, they're going to have kind of the preliminary design done by the end of 2015, with a first flying prototype by 2022. So about, what is that, like 7 years or so? It's a medium-class launcher with a weight of about 270 tons. Now, they can actually, they're focusing on the medium-class part of this right now. They can actually make it a heavy-class launcher by adding strap-on boosters to the side, but for now, medium-class. And they say it's not going to, because Russia also has the Angara rocket. It is not going to really compete with the Angara class of vehicles, which I'm not entirely sure how that works, because Angara is designed to be like low, medium, high, and like just change the config. So I'm not sure why they think it's not going to compete with Angara, but okay, whatever.
But it's not gonna.
But it's not gonna. It's also using all new engines. They're using liquid natural gas as their fuel, and then I assume liquid oxygen as the oxidizer. So it's an eco-friendly engine as opposed to kerosene, burning kerosene, the big black clouds of kerosene that get burned off with any rocket that burns off RP1. And the other interesting thing, these engines, they're going to be developed from scratch. So it's basically a brand new vehicle.
Nice.
Yeah. So we'll see more information of that. August of this year, there's a show they're going to be kind of presenting some basic
I'm sorry, did you
information.
say August of this year? Like the last 3 days of this month right now? Okay.
That doesn't seem right. Maybe
We're gonna
September?
go with that. Sure. Absolutely.
They're going to be presenting more information on it. And then definitely by the end of 2015, they're going to have the draft design. I'm just going to drink my...
Sorry, you did mention the date at the top of the show. August 29th.
Yeah, I'm not very good at those whole dates thing. Time, I'm good at. Dates, not so much. Time. All right. Speaking of, why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break. We've got an amazing tour of Copenhagen Suborbitals because they're doing some pretty amazing things. And they did an Indiegogo campaign to fly a rocket. It was successful, and you get to see some of that in an upcoming kind of little tour around their facility. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Copenhagen Suborbitals.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. Nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Her heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. What was the back? Someone said that my shirt made this look like a really distinguished old school space show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Distinguished.
Thankfully,
is not,
I take all that away.
no. Distinguished is not a word I'd use to describe this show. But I would like to thank all of the patrons. What a horrible segue that is. I'd like to thank all of the patrons of Tomorrow for helping to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are people who've contributed $5 or more to this specific episode. You can find out more information on how you can help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow over at patreon.com/TMRO. Now, I'm a terrible space geek because Copenhagen Suborbitals had an Indiegogo campaign that was going on for a little while. They're trying to raise, I don't remember, I think it was like 10,000 US dollars, something like that. And it ended on August 25th, which is before this show, and we never mentioned it because I think they kind of told me about it offhandedly, and I didn't actually comprehend what they were saying, and we should have mentioned it in the last show, but I didn't get that was a thing that was ending imminently. So you can't contribute to the campaign anymore, but you can contribute to Copenhagen Suborbitals if you go over to COPSUB, 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 I suppose it would be, .com. There's a little donate page, and they tell you a bunch of stuff that's going on. But we had Mads on the show earlier this year, last year, something like that, talking about what Copenhagen Suborbital is up to. Those guys are crazy awesome. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. They're crazy, awesome. Yeah, but in a really good way. I mean, they're doing some amazing things on an absolutely no budget whatsoever. And he said, hey, we've got this campaign going. Would you like a tour? And I was like, heck yeah. And so they recorded for us a special tour. And I'd like to turn it back over to Mads and have him show us what's going on at Copenhagen.
Hello, Benjamin. It's nice to be back with you. It's been a while since we last spoke. I'm standing here today in front of the Copenhagen Suborbitals workshop. And today I want to introduce you and your audience to our new Nexø class rockets that we are going to launch in a few weeks, hopefully if the weather is as we expect it to be. But follow me and let's go into the workshop and look at the rocket. So this is the inside of Copenhagen Suborbitals workshop. I know the last time we spoke I showed you a lot of videos of our launches, but this is actually where it all happens. This is an old building at the shipyard in Copenhagen that we have rebuilt to be our main production facility for the rockets that we make. And you can see over in the corner we have Peter Meinke standing right now welding some parts for the Nexø rocket that we are going to launch very shortly. You can see the rocket lying over here, getting ready for the final assembly, but let's go over and take a look at that. So if we start down here at the bottom end of the rocket, you can see we down here have fitted the BPM-5 engine. This is number 2 in the series of 3 engines that we have tested this spring. So this engine has been pre-tested and flight qualified and is now mounted and aligned in the rocket assembly. We have just a few weeks ago completed the assembly of tubes and actuators to control the fuel and oxygen valves. Right here is the electronics box for the engine controller, and you can see up here we have the inlet tubes for the liquid oxygen and liquid alcohol that we're going to use as a fuel. One new thing about this rocket, as you can see if you look down in the bottom, is these slip rings here that we are going to use for remote pressurization and remote fueling of the rocket. These simply will fit onto a corresponding plate on the launch platform so that we can do everything remote, and once the rocket launches, these will just go right off and shut off the pressure line. This is very exciting, and we really hope that this is going to work as expected. Moving forward up, we have the tank sections. You can see here we have the intertank section, where we have some extra pressurization valves and some in and outlet valves, and then the next tank section. And up here, once again, we will have some safety valves and some pressurization valves for the liquid oxygen. Next, the avionics bay. This is where all the computers fit in. You can see the battery pack has just been installed. And then at the top of the rocket, we have the parachute compartment. The parachute is packed and ready and has been tested several times this spring. We have actually tested our parachutes at some manned jumps this spring. So that is ready to be installed, and then we will up here have the nose cone, which is in production, in final alignment right now, and it will be fitted very shortly within a few days. Here you see a schematic overview over the Nexø rocket as it will be once we have assembled everything. The rocket is 5.41 meters long, and the purpose of this rocket is not to go to space. The purpose of this rocket is to test various subsystems that we will later use for the manned Spica mission that we are planning. We are planning the first launch of the prototype Spica rocket in 2017. And on Nexø, we will test avionics, we will test parachute deployment, and most importantly, we will test our guidance system that we flew first time on the Sapphire rocket. It has been improved since then, and now it is going to be finally qualified with the Nexø flights. The Nexø 1, as we're looking at here, will be the first one to fly of the Nexø class, and we are planning also a Nexø 2 that hopefully will fly next spring. The Nexø 2 will, apart from all the other systems, also test our dynamic pressure regulation system that will also eventually fly on the Spica rocket. So this rocket is not, as I said before, going to space. This rocket will go up to about 6 to 10 kilometers, but it's very important that we do this launch because we need to test all the subsystems and finalize them for our manned flight. So this is where the Nexø rocket will be fired. This is our mobile launch platform Sputnik. And once the rocket is finished and ready, then we will mount it on this launch rail here, and then we will sail the rocket to Bornholm and fire it from the sea outside Bornholm on our platform here. If you look down, you can see we have here the flame deflector where all the exhaust plumes go out once the rocket fires. And in each side of the platform we have two small engines that can keep it in place. So I guess this is a little bit like SpaceX, just on a very much smaller scale. To control the entire mission, we have our mission control ship Vostok that also has been maintained and refurbished and made ready over the winter, and with her 950 horsepower engine, she is ready to go with the launch platform as soon as the rocket is ready. So basically right now she's just lying here in the harbor and waiting to go, very anxious like the rest of us. But if you want to see more about the operation and read more about the Nexø class and our BPM-5 engines, make sure to go to our website www.copsup.com, and there you can read all about it. It was a pleasure, Benjamin. Have a nice show and see you soon again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mads. That's a really great run through. We totally threw that at them last minute earlier this week. They're like, oh, we'd love to come on the show, but you know, there's a huge time zone change, and then we really wanted the tour of what they've got going on there. And doing that live is actually very difficult to do and coordinate and make happen. And I love the fact that, and this was brought up in the chat room, you know, they're doing this tour, they're like, hey, look at all this stuff, and they're just building random rocket parts in the background, right?
Yeah.
They're just working randomly on this rocket.
As you can see, this guy is clearly already working on our things. Like,
yeah, I know.
So awesome.
Pretty cool. They are really awesome. Now, Miniature Stoge, one of the Space Pod correspondents, wanted me to ask and make sure that Copenhagen Suborbitals knew that she was available for astronaut testing of the vehicle when they're ready for that. She'll go in. She's She is tiny. So she is perfect for a small rocket because she herself is small, hence the name. So if you need an astronaut, she's more than happy to do it. She's willing to travel the world, as we've already found out, because she's from Australia. She made it over here, now she's somewhere in Florida or something like that. So there you go. Lisa, I have done my part. It's up to you from here on out. It's really cool what they're working on, right? And if you think that what they're doing is awesome and you want to help them, you can head on. First off, you can help them like in person, right? They take volunteers, and you can just go work on a part of the rocket. That would be in Copenhagen. So you need to be in Copenhagen for that to work.
Go Denmark.
Or just, you know, go on a plane. I mean, Lisa did it, right? She just
Darn tootin'.
kind of. Would that be a walkabout?
Sort of.
I guess.
Sort of.
So you could do it if you wanted to, but if you're not willing to do that, they'll also take cold hard cash because making rockets does cost money. You can head on over to CopenhagenSuborbitals.com, and there's a section down there that says we're 100% nonprofit and crowdfunded. Please donate here. There was also an Indiegogo campaign that I talked about. Now, if you really like this, you're like, but I'm giving too much money to tomorrow, and I don't. feel free to like scale back your tomorrow contribution and give a little bit over to Copenhagen, because they're building their actual hardware, and that's bending metal is important, and supporting those guys is anyone who's bending metal and actually making stuff is important. So feel free to scale that back, send some of that money their way. We're gonna see what we can do to help them out as well. I'm really excited. They also air all of their stuff live, so you'll that launch you're talking about, the Nexio 1, you're gonna see that most likely live. And the other really insane, crazy thing is they don't just build the spaceship or the rocket. They also build the mobile launch platform that goes out to sea. Sputnik.
I love that.
To launch the rocket from. So they've built all the ground systems and the launch systems and the rocket and the engine. The whole thing is theirs. It's really quite amazing and astounding to see what a bunch of volunteers have done for almost no money whatsoever. So there you go. That's like I said, more information over. There's a ton of stuff Tara's just passed into the chat room on different areas.
Copenhagen Suborbitals.com.
But copesub.com, and you'll find all their social media stuff, all the stuff that they're working on, and then we'll continue to follow that launch. And I'll work on seeing if we can't get a live feed from them and actually try to put that live on our YouTube channel as well, so you guys can follow along. I think that'd be pretty cool, and go from there. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, comments from our last show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get into comments from our last show, I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are our Patreon Plus subscribers. These are people who have contributed $2 or 50 cents or more to this specific episode. You can help fund those shows over at the bottom of the screen. You see the URL. And these people, when we go into After Dark after the show, which is an unscripted, we'll talk about anything. Sometimes awesome things happen. Sometimes they're awful. I make no guarantees on After Dark, but no, really, sometimes some amazing stuff comes out in After Dark.
I think Minnie Stoge was talking about how she didn't have a whole lot of connectivity while at the Girl Scout camp. So when she did, she kind of binge watched all of the After Darks. And I said, oh, wow, that must have been a lot of content. And she said, yeah, but it was worth it because every once in a while you get that tiny little nugget buried deep in a conversation.
So all these people will get access to After Dark right away as soon as it's posted as our Patreon Plus subscribers. For everyone else, we will make it available publicly in a week's time. There's also our Patreon subscribers. These are people who contributed 1 penny or more, up to $2.49 to the show. So that's right, as little as 1 penny. If you think the show is worth something but not worth much at all,
worth an undeniable amount
cent.
that you will not even notice out of your bank account.
Definitely 1 penny per episode.
Yes.
You will get your name in the show, and even for the people who contributed 1 penny, thank you for supporting the show and helping us to continue to do what we do. We couldn't do it without you. So more information over at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some comments from our last week's show. So first up, this one.
Oh, wow. Thanks for that. This one comes from Joachim Volstov off of YouTube. It would be awesome if you had Elon Musk on your show sometime in the future.
So we did have Elon Musk on the show in the past, in the show called Yesterday. We actually had him on on the old Space Vidcast channel. We did interview Elon. The thing with Elon, and I said this on our Reddit page, is that we will ask to bring him back on again, but I want to get the timing right? So if I bring him on right now, what is he going to talk about? He's going to talk about all the stuff that we already know. What we're really interested in is the Mars Colonial Transporter. Yeah. We want to know how SpaceX is bringing humanity to Mars. That's what we're interested in.
Well,
what is that game plan?
There's a really fabulous Wait But Why?
Wait But Why.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and Wait But Why article. Is that right? Anyway, really amazing. It's really, really long, but it's really well worth the read. It does talk about how SpaceX some of the plans that SpaceX has, but for sure, that's exactly what we would want Elon to talk about because that's the exciting part.
And the timing for that is wrong right now.
Yeah.
So it's a timing issue, right? We want to get a little bit closer to when SpaceX is ready with Mars Colonial Transporter and some of the components for that, and some of those plans kind of ready to announce. And so then we bring them on and we talk about, okay, what is your vision of the future? What does Mars look like to you? You know, 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, 100 years in the future. What is Mars to you? That's what we want to ask him. And the timing for that is just not right now. So we're going to wait a little while, and we're going to do it then. There is it'll probably be Space Mike that has to do that particular interview. Yeah.
No
That's why we haven't done it again yet, at least. Otherwise, for all the information that's current, like why he did what he's doing up till now, that last interview does cover all of that, talking about the greenhouse project on Mars and everything else. It was actually a pretty good interview. I want to say it was about 20 minutes long or so. It was a space pod, so go over to youtube.com/spacevidcast, and it's somewhere buried in our archives over there. All right, next up.
This one comes from Bernard Gilbert, also off of YouTube. We have to go back to the moon first because there is so much we still have to learn about how to grow regular food in space. I don't believe anyone is going to want to subsist on their diet entirely of insects, how to deal with the long-term effects of radiation exposure, and living in a zero-G environment.
So I mean, I think that's partly due to the ISS talk we had last week of them growing the red lettuce on the International Space Station.
It's kind of funny that you say you don't believe anyone is going to want to subsist their diet entirely of insects, and yet there's vegans and vegetarians all over the world that are perfectly happy to do so.
Yeah, but the point is, it wouldn't be entirely of insects. It may not even have to be much or any insects at all. You can get a lot of the protein in existing things you can already grow in space, and we've actually already, even without going to the moon, we've started that testing already with the red lettuce that we grow on the International Space Station. That's the point of what they're doing. And in fact, a lot of what you talk about, we have already and are currently testing on the International Space Station and do not need the moon to test that. We already have a floating laboratory in space capable of answering a large chunk of these questions. Minor exception is radiation. The International Space Station is low enough where there is some of Earth's atmosphere protecting it from radiation. However, really, radiation we know how to protect from. It's just a weight problem at this point. So we just need to find other ways to deal with that. And then once they're on Mars, there is actually some atmosphere in Mars, and you can dig underground and do radiation protection there. So, we've got enough testing in all of those areas, or at least enough foothold in all those areas where I'm not sure we need to go to the moon first to get answers to those particular questions. We have everything we need in place to start answering those questions. We don't have those answers today, but we don't need to be on the moon to get those answers, I think is my point.
Fair
That's not to say that we shouldn't go to the moon first. It's just to say that I'm not sure that that's why we should go to the moon first.
All right.
All right.
Next comment comes from Joseph Harner, also off of YouTube. Dave Maston in studio again? I feel like I don't even need to finish watching this before upvoting it.
Why do you have to finish watching any episode before upvoting it? If it's tomorrow episode, if it's a tomorrow,
let's be honest
No,
here.
come on. No, these shows are awesome. You know what's interesting is
Parts
that
of them are, yes, absolutely. I
them are.
appreciate you saying that.
Very small segments of the show are
Very
interesting.
small segments of it.
I think it's funny that within 4 to 8 hours of posting the show, we'll always, without fail, always have at least one downvote on YouTube.
Yeah.
Always.
But we know who that is, and we're coming after him. It's fine.
Anyhow, we do love.
We might be a small operation, but we have InfoSec team.
We love having Dave Maston in-house. That one we sprung on him, like we found out the day before he was going to be in town. We're like, come on the show? He's like, maybe. We're like, cool, we'll take that as a yes. And so
Pretty much. That's what we do to introverts.
yeah, and so we get him on the show, and it's always amazing and awesome to have him on. Basically, when we did the April Fool's joke of Dave Maston's Space Systems buy-in tomorrow, it worked because it felt so like it could be a actual thing that happened. So we love having Dave on the show, and thank him for taking time out of his weekend to actually talk to us crazy people. All right, moving right along.
This one comes from Mila Miglia?
Yep.
I'm going to say Mila Miglia.
What? All right.
Okay, deep breath. Also from YouTube.
A wall of
I
words.
see Maston make the same timid mistake that Armadillo made, being intimidated by orbit, not even being conscious of that intimidation, and wasting forever on useless rocket jumping and small dead-end programs. You do the math for minimal payload to orbit, and you go for it. Incremental is irrational when it's obviously possible to go directly. Rocketry is a 100-year-old technology. No excuse is valid.
I don't entirely
The
agree.
only thing I have to say to this comment is, if it was so easy, why aren't you doing it?
Well, kind of. It's expensive. I don't entirely agree. So rocketry is 100-year-old technology. Why do we need Maston to come up with another orbital system just like everyone else, right?
Right.
That is fixed. That is solved. That is known. What is not fixed, solved, and known is how you land those things again. Now, you go, okay, but what's the point, right? So you launch a vehicle up into space, you flip it around, you bring it back to Earth. Yeah, maybe you'll get some cost savings. Why do I care, right? So just do what you're doing, it's been working. Except that when you want to put humans on Mars, you're going to need to propulsively land. And you're going to need to understand the technologies that Dave Maston is working on right now in order to put humans on the moon or on Mars autonomously. More on Mars than on the moon. We've already figured out how to do the moon, but Mars is harder. Mars is a lot harder. And so the technology he's working on to autonomously land vehicles, to figure out how to propulsively land these things through atmosphere is directly relevant to putting humans on Mars. And you can't just go, oh, well, just go orbital and suddenly magically the rest of it comes into play.
Right.
It doesn't. These little jumps make a difference. SpaceX even did it. In some other comment, I think SpaceX was cited. SpaceX had the Grasshopper program where they sat there and they jumped for a while. It's a natural part of what you need to do. And just because it's not a big, huge rocket going to orbit doesn't mean that it's not just as impressive technologically as a
Right.
big, huge rocket going to orbit. In fact, I'd say it's more technologically impressive because we've had big, huge rockets going to orbit for quite some time now. So I wouldn't say 100 years. Rocketry is 100-year-old technology. Orbital technology is not. But yeah, so I fundamentally disagree with the general premise that orbital is where you need to be and that jumping up and down isn't useful, because it is actually useful. You do learn stuff. And I think he's been able to keep a business going for a long time and get DARPA contracts and get people interested in this stuff. And that's business savvy, not just rocketry savvy. And so it's hard to compare. You got one company that kind of got put on hold with Armadillo?
Yeah.
Carmack, right?
Yeah.
All right. So Carmack kind of put Armadillo in aerospace, which was very similar to what Dave is doing, but Dave has successfully continued forward.
Well,
but
and John just shut everything down, didn't he?
He may have. If
Yeah.
he did, I missed that. So, but you could also look at, okay, well, if you go back to before SpaceX was successful, you could go, well, Beale Aerospace tried to do that, and they weren't successful. So obviously,
Right.
what SpaceX trying to do is not going to be successful either. That's not that was wrong, right? Beale Aerospace did not make it, but SpaceX was able to build on top of that and do something successful.
Sure.
I would say the same could be true of Armadillo versus Maston Space Systems. One was able to make it happen, one wasn't. There you go. So, all right, that's the end of that particular soapbox.
All right. This one
Ah!
comes off of Reddit from Hugo Reventlov.
Sure.
Hugo says, I'm currently halfway through the show, but I thought I heard Ben say that Antares is scheduled to launch a Cygnus to ISS later this year. I'm not sure if he has gotten some other kind of information, but I thought Cygnus flight later this year was going on an Atlas V.
Yeah, Hugo, you are right. I was very, very wrong. I mentally just put the Cygnus on top of Antares because that's what I do. And I know Antares is working on return to flight, and I forgot that they have a couple of Atlas V launches. I was going to refer to it as a Delta V just to mess with you guys, but decided not to apparently. But they're going to be launching on an Atlas V, not on the Antares rocket. So Cygnus goes up on an Atlas V. In December.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It was a dumb mistake on my part.
Sure,
so
but
I was wrong.
it's still a lot to keep track of.
I was wrong. You called me on it. 2
Absolutely.
points. You get 2 tech points.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go. All right, and
Finally, off of Twitter, this is John Eogle.
Yogle.
We'll say that. John says moon or Mars. I say moon, then Venus and Mars.
Ooh, well, or why not all three? The Venetian airships, skyships, seem like a pretty cool idea because it'd be like building a ship and dropping it in the ocean here, but it'd be floating in the Venus clouds because of the density up there.
Yay, Cloud City.
Cloud City, and it'd actually be not that hard to do. I know, but it'd be really freaking awesome. So I think we need to have the TMRO travel posters. You're starting to kind of see a few of those, but there needs to be the Venetian Cloud City.
Yeah.
We need to have the Martian, like Olympus Mons hiking expedition, which, as I understand it, is a very, very long and slow grade, so it'd be the world's most boring hike ever.
Whatever.
Stuff like that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So there
Nice.
you go. All right, that's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for joining us. We'll be back next week, and it should be another hoot and a half. So on that note, After Dark is up next. If you're watching live, stay tuned. Otherwise, for everyone else, if you're a Patreon Plus subscriber, you get it right away. For everyone else, it'll be available in 4-ish weeks or so. I'm not sure. Thanks for watching. See you next week.